Gregory, we're on.
Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock, Jeff Upson with you here, dealing with some technical issues a little bit here, Jeff, I think, because the normal way we start this show did not happen on my side.
Well, sounds like a you issue, not a me issue. That's
I
what
don't
I.
know. I mean, we're having some microphone issues that seem to be a you issue there. So
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to collect scores from tonight. I don't know what you're doing. You're scrolling on Instagram or something. I'm trying to get scores. We got section champions crowned tonight, and Greg's just like do. Like, come on, Greg, get with it.
I don't have Instagram, so I mean that was a nice
That's
try, Jeff,
shocking.
but
Shocking.
shocking. I'm not the social media buff like you are, my friend.
I'm not either. Trust me. That's for damn
See, I
sure.
don't live off of being well liked like you do.
I'm not well. I'm very much not well liked. You can ask a lot of coaches. You can ask a lot of parents out there. I mean, I don't think I'm that well liked, but maybe I am. I don't know.
I think you are. I don't think you've ever repeated a wrestling shirt in the 6-7 years we've been doing this. How many years? I don't think
It's,
you've repeated one.
I think I have. My favorite ones I repeat. Like the Kiski team shirt. I like wearing that one. Shout out to Kiski and Chris Heater. They won a section title tonight. They beat Fox Chapel. So yeah, we got a lot to dive into because it's officially team postseason action right now. But we still have some individual stuff going on. And I can't wait to recap the Allegheny County Tournament. We were there this weekend streaming it, so got to see a lot of that. Yeah, it was a good weekend.
Coach Heater, if you're watching though, remember last week I had the team shirt on. We haven't seen it from Jeff all season. So just want to point that out there, Coach. I appreciate you a little bit more than Jeff does. But let's go ahead and dive right in, Jeff, since you mentioned it at the Allegheny County Tournament. It's definitely some good matches. And let's start at 107 pounds, where really it was a good one in the finals. Anthony Jones of Shaler in overtime beats Javion Chambers of Highlands 7-4.
Yeah, I mean, Chambers was coming off a really good performance at the Midwinter Mayhem where he took second, losing to Keegan Basket. I said Keegan Basket. Keegan
Wow.
Bassett.
I hope they're not listening. You're the host, man.
It's crazy, man. I got a lot on my mind right now. The section championships right now are just flowing through my head right now. The 107-pound finals match was a really good one. Anthony Jones, somebody who we saw him do really well at the King of the Mountain, but just we haven't seen him much since then. This was a really big win because Zach Rehack was here as well. So was Bryce Thomas from Moon, Bennett Ferraro as well from Pine Richland. So you had a really good core group of wrestlers here at 107. Jones ends up getting the title. I'd like to see this one happen again, but Chambers is still wrestling really well.
Yeah, and you know what? You look at the third place match. Rehack ends up getting a fall over Bryce Thomas. Thomas actually pinned Rehack in the quarterfinals. It was a really strong weight, and Bennett Ferraro, Pine Richland finishes in fifth place as well. So just overall, I think 107, one of the solid weights at the Allegheny County Tournament. 114 pounds, Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, dominant, winning by tech fall to win the title.
Yeah, we didn't get to see freshman Preston Bubash from Elizabeth Ford here, so that was one I was kind of looking forward to. But I will say the person who impressed me the most was Robert Cordova of TJ. He's a freshman. He looked really, really good. Beat Jaden Polumbine from Bethel Park, but also teched Braden Rohaley of North Hills in the third place match. So yes, Anderchak was dominant. We sort of expected that, especially without Bubash there. But I think Cordova is going to be a critical part. I had mentioned about Braden White, but I think Cordova, he is going to determine whether this team goes far or not in the postseason.
121, Pierce Reinhardt of Bethel Park, a winner by fall over Jonathan Emma of Mount Lebanon to win the title.
And this was a deep weight class. I mean, you look at Brock Dennison took 6 here, and Warson was 5th. Those are two really good wrestlers in the 5th and 6th place match. So just a lot of balance here. Reinhardt ends up getting the fall, but you had Kasanovic from Avonworth take 3rd. And you kind of see these inflated scores. I think we talked about this last week, is that, it's not necessarily, it's a tech fall, but is it a tech fall of the old times? And it's not, right? So it tends to be a little misleading, but Reinhardt was very solid throughout, and I think, again, like Cordova, I talked about at 114, I think Reinhardt's got to be one of those guys for Bethel Park for them to really be successful. He's got to be on.
127, Evan Sala of Mount Lebanon, a 1-0 win over Colton Fisher of Bethel Park for the title.
Evan Sala really impressed me. He had been out for a little bit. I don't know if he was hurt, but he was out of the lineup for a little bit. Sala was a really, really good youth wrestler coming up through. I remember seeing his name a whole lot in brackets and results. Maybe a little bit quiet to start his career, but I'll tell you what, he had a really good county tournament, beating a very tough Colton Fisher in the finals there. But you also got to look at who he finished ahead of. Landon Funk from Fox Chapel, who we've been talking about a lot here on the show. So overall, I thought that was probably one of the more impressive performances.
A guy with a really strong tournament at 133 was Cale Yannick of Moon. Not only does he beat Seth Miller of Bethel Park to win the title in the finals, but also knocks off top seed Gus Stediford of North Allegheny 4-2 in the semis.
He was another one that was out for a little bit. I think he missed at least a couple weeks, if not more, of wrestling action. So, you never really know how that person's going to be when they come back, right? If there's a little bit of rust, or if it's an injury, if it's lingering. But Cale Yannick looked solid. Not particularly. I mean, when you look at the scores, you're like, okay, yeah, he's. But I would say he was still wrestling a little conservative. I think he can still open it up a little bit more. Seth Miller is tough. Stediford was the one that I thought, okay, he's kind of been the guy for. I feel like we've been talking about him for years. But man, Cale Yannick, and he jumped up in the rankings for good reason. He moved up to number 15 in AAA, so that was a very notable performance.
139, a deep weight class, and it was dominated by Dom Ferraro of Pine Richland, winning by tech fall in the finals over Owen Campbell, who had a big win in the semis. Campbell of Plum over Matt Dana of Quaker Valley 4-3. Dana finished in third. Talamazinko of South Fayette in fourth. Aiden Burford of Highlands in fifth. A deep weight class here at 139.
Yeah, I mean, even go down further, Aiden Stout from Bethel was seventh. So, yeah, I mean, this was a really deep weight class, a pretty balanced weight class. But Dom Ferraro, I think, continues to prove why he's a top 10 guy in the state. I think he's for sure a podium threat. I think he's a WPIAL champion threat too at 139 pounds. So I think he's going to just continue to progress and do well. Again, it's sort of like his brother. His brother kind of came on a little bit later in his career, but man, like his senior year just came out and just dominated. I think Dom Ferraro is going to have a really good year.
145, another strong performance from Romeo Islamov of Baldwin. He ends up teching Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth forward in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, and this was Boyer's first time being down at 145, and Islamov looked every bit in control of that match. I mean, it was he just dominated, right, from start to finish, and he kind of dominated all weekend. You always wonder, okay, like, Baldwin's not maybe your traditional power team, right? And you always wonder, okay, is that wrestler going to continue to get better within the program? And I think Islamov has continued to get better, and I think he's continued to show that he's, the last year wasn't a fluke, right? A lot of people say, well, he had a good tournament. No, he's proven that he's a elite wrestler. Higgins was third. He's another one that I think is just a critical component to that Bethel Park team. When he's on, they're going to do well.
152, Maddox Shaw of Thomas Jefferson returns to the lineup. Any signs of injury there for him, Jeff?
Not that I saw. He looked ask his opponents. I don't think his opponents saw any forms of weakness or injury, or no chinks in the armor for Maddox Shaw. He dominated. And it's crazy to think, because if you look at the weight class outside of Maddox, it was a pretty good weight class. You had some good weights there. Trent Reese had a good tournament up until he had to forfeit in that third and fourth place match, but he actually beat Griffin Reed. Luke Dunlop was runner up there. He's a state qualifier. Worstel from USC, he's had a good season. Dimer was sixth there. So, yeah, I mean, Maddox Shaw was the guy, but I still think there was some balance there outside of him.
Jeff, 160 pounds. We talked about this weight, one being a solid weight overall, but two, really, what was going to happen with Braden White? Where was he going to enter since he was not into the top 8, but had to go in as one of the favorites? And he ends up feeding right into the 8 seed, which was Kellen Buggy, gets the win over him, wins by fall. Then he ends up not even getting to wrestle Rook Smith because he gets upset by Liam Costa of Moon in the round of 16. So White ends up beating Costa, Chu, and he beats Cole Gibbons by major to win the title. And Rook Smith doesn't even get on the award stand in the top 8 as he lost to Kellen Buggy in the consolations. So great tournament from Braden White, as we kind of thought could happen. Tough one for Rook Smith, the top seed.
Yeah, this was a weird weight class. I'll just put it to you that. I mean, it was weird. You couldn't get a really good sense of who was going to win and who was going to beat who here, because you just had a lot of I wouldn't say they're upsets, but you had some surprising results. Kellen Buggy's just been, and I think most of NA would agree, he's been inconsistent this year for North Allegheny. Cooper Dietz, I thought, has wrestled really well. He takes third. Cole Gibbons, a state qualifier last year, is one of the top wrestlers in the state, and Braden White is like, you know what, I'm unseeded, I'm coming in, and I'm just going to take it everything from you. Again, like I wish Braden White had been around for a little bit longer, because I think, imagine if he had a year more under his belt of wrestling. He's been, again, good for a very, very long time. And then just, circumstances were that we didn't get to see him. And now we're actually seeing him compete at such a high level. I mean, just sandwiched in between two of the best wrestlers in the state, in the nation, really, in Maddox Shaw and Bodie Marlowe. He has no other place to go but get better, and I think it shows.
Yeah, and really just overall, just a deep weight class, and probably the deepest, and Braden White ends up winning it. So overall, a solid performance. 172 pounds, you mentioned Bodie Marlowe. He ends up winning the title by tech fall in the finals.
Yeah, and it was hold on, Greg. I was just getting some updates from some of the sections here. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What weight were you talking about? Bodie Marlowe. Yeah, he dominated. Sorry, his dad was messaging me with updates. Okay, Bob is my go-to for TJ and Ringgold stuff. Bodie Marlowe was incredible. TJ was incredible overall. I mean, they set the new team record at the Allegheny County Tournament. Bodie Marlowe was just, he was on a different level. Got a first period tech fall in the finals there, and 72 was a lot like 160 to me. It was kind of back and forth. Morvay, I think, is probably one of the most improved wrestlers in the WPIAL. He made it to the finals there, but Mac Miller is fifth. It was a very deep weight class.
Well, how about Morvay? I mean, you say the first period tech, and it's like, oh, okay. But you're wrestling against one of the best guys in the nation, Bodie Marlowe. How about the tournament he had prior to that, right? He beats Mac Miller 7-6 in the quarters. He beats Michael Lawrence of Chartiers Valley 5-4 in the semis. These are the two guys who you thought, hey, they're going to battle in the semis for the right to wrestle Marlowe. Instead, he beats them both. Yeah,
and you're right. Again, I think that's why he's one of the most improved wrestlers in the WPIAL. I'm sure he gets to train with Virtus Jones every day, and that probably helps. Sepelak from Plum also impressed me. Again, he had that win over Lawrence, and he ends up taking third, beating Marcus Ritchie. So I hate to say it, but it's like whoever decides to show up that week, outside of Marlowe, everybody else, like I think Morvay, Sepelak, Miller, Lawrence, even Caden Wills, like you throw them in a bag, shake them up, I think anybody would come out. I really don't. I don't think there's a clear favorite there. If Michael Lawrence is healthy, I think he's definitely been wrestling good. Mac Miller's the other one. Like I just it depends on what version you get of him.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, you don't want to say this about a wrestler, but a little bit disappointing, I guess, as far as his performance this season. Hasn't been able to find that consistency he found last year when he had the success he did. And I think you mentioned it last week, right? Up a weight, and maybe he
Long
goes
football
down,
season.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a combination of factors. He just hasn't been able to find that consistent rhythm that he was in last year, and still some time, obviously, right, to get into that. Still a month ago before the individual postseason, but definitely something I'm sure he's trying to figure out the kinks as far as what's going on there. 189 pounds, Nez Green of Central Catholic, a winner in the finals, 5-4 over Zach LeBrier of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, and this was an avenge match. This was a rematch. Nez was able to get the win this time around. These two are back and forth, and what's crazy to me is when you look at TJ, they had two guys finish in the top 4 here. Now Trent Miller traditionally is up at 215 a lot, but I mean in terms of dual meets, the flexibility to have LeBrier and Miller both available at 189. And you can alternate who's going up and who's staying down. That's really critical. So they're obviously both really good. They finished second and fourth in the same weight.
215, Roman Thompson of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, a win by fall in the finals.
Yeah, I mean there wasn't a lot of surprise here. We kind of expected that, and when you look at how dominant Roman's been for the last 2 years that he's been in high school, but even before that, it wasn't very surprising. But he's always the one that I'm like, if he could just wrestle a couple more hammers to really see where, because you look at who he's wrestled this year and you're like, okay, there's no one really that sticks out that you're like, man, that's a really quality win. Not against him. It's just the fact of who he gets to wrestle. But I'm very curious to see how he does on an individual level.
285 pounds, Shep Turk of Thomas Jefferson. He wins the title. But really, Jeff, to me, what stuck out was the guys who finished in second and third. Henry Barbish of Carlinton, he comes in and beats Ben Lloyd and Michael Gibson of Bethel Park, both by fall, to get to the finals against Shep Turk. And how about in third place, Parker Cunningham of South Park? He dropped a decision to Ben Lloyd 4-2 in the round of 16, but comes all the way back through in the consolations to finish in third, ahead of Ben Lloyd and Braden McConnell of North Allegheny, Michael Gibson of Bethel Park. Solid performance from 2 and 3.
I would 100% agree with you. Obviously we know Shep Turk is one of the best in the state. With Barbish, that was a really good run for him to get to the finals because we knew it was going to be challenging, right? When you have Ben Lloyd there and Parker Cunningham, I cannot say enough about him. It's like, where did he come from? He's been wrestling, but it's lights out this year. He's been wrestling so well up at 285, and Ben Lloyd does avenge the loss that he had earlier this season to Gibson, ends up beating him to take fifth. But, Shep Turk is definitely on another level. And then you kind of look at least from the AAA standpoint, who else is going to fill that gap? In the AA, Barbish is he's wrestling really well. And I don't think Parker Cunningham's kind of chomping at the bit there too.
Yeah, two solid heavyweights just continuing to get better on the AA side, coming out from Allegheny County. So definitely two guys to watch as we head into the individual postseason. As far as Escape the Rock, Jeff, Connellsville, the only WPIAL team out there, obviously one of the best tournaments in the nation. They did end up with two medalists from the tournament. Kai Vioma at 139 finished in fourth place, and Evan Petrovich at 152, he finished in fifth place.
Yeah, this is one of the best tournaments in the nation. Certainly, probably the second best in the state. When you look at where the tournament rankings are, and Powerade's the number one, but Escape the Rock is just super, super deep, and they get a lot of the same schools from the Powerade. You'll see a lot of the similar names that placed at Powerade also placed at Escape the Rock. Excuse me. You look at 107, Tommy Gretz was not able to get on the podium here. a really deep weight class at 107 pounds. I mean, really wasn't a weight class that you're like, that wasn't too deep. Kai Vielma, on the other hand, I mean, he's kind of in a good position, I think, when you look at the state rankings, because he moves up to number one. Trey Wagner is on his way back down to 133. Anthony Mutarelli's coming down to 133. He wasn't at the Escape to Rock, but he is down at 133. So it kind of opens up wide open, in my opinion, 139. Kai Vielma is currently right now occupying that top spot, but it's a crapshoot. There's a lot of guys that I think could battle in that position. But I think him placing fourth here was a really big statement for him, especially finishing ahead of some guys that he potentially is going to see.
Yeah, and definitely something to build off of. I think he's definitely hitting his stride a bit, right? Kai Vielma is, and obviously Petrovic just continues to be solid, throughout. So obviously two of the guys, but overall, I think Connell's a lot to take away from that tournament, and obviously take into the sections where they ended up winning here tonight. We'll talk about that in a minute. The duels at Brookville, Jeff. We talk about every year. Burrell goes in, and this is really their time to kind of test themselves a bit. And this year was really no different. They ended up in second place in the final standings. They were 4-1. Reynolds won it at 5-0. Chestnut Ridge was 3-2. Penn Trafford 2-3. Brookville was 1-4, and Fraser was 0-5. But just to look at the Burrell results, Burrell ended up beating Brookville 48-21. They also beat Chestnut Ridge 50-21. So two big wins from Burrell in those. They also beat Penn Trafford 55-12 and Fraser 60-13, but they did drop that decision to Reynolds 33-30.
Yeah, I mean, so Reynolds is back. They were down for a little bit, and in traditional Casey Taylor and Hills fashion, Reynolds finds a way to come back from the dead, and man, they looked good. They got some guys back in the lineup that were pretty essential for them. Waylon Waite is back, and Lamont is back, and they have guys at the right weights this time. And man, you look at the individual box score for Reynolds and Burrell, a lot could change next time around. Reynolds did give up one forfeit. They forfeited at 152 to Zanella. But you looked at the amount of decisions here. Lisinski from Burrell won a very tight 7-6 match over Louis DeGillo from Reynolds, who those two, that's a toss-up. I think Colton Tupper versus Luke Boylan is a toss-up. Colton Tupper ended up winning it 4-0, but going into that, I thought Luke Boylan may have been favored. Flock at heavyweight beat Kuhn from Burrell 3-0. Those three right there could immensely change that match, right? Those three, I think, are really just the critical components there. Reynolds did get a forfeit at 133. And then there was a sudden victory win where I thought this one had all the makings of being a barn burner, and ended up being one, was Gustus versus Bertucci. And Graydon Gustus ended up winning this 11-8 in sudden victory. So, I mean, again, on paper, yes, this was Reynolds dominated the day, but Burrell finds ways to make adjustments. And not saying Reynolds does not, because clearly they do. They've won a ton of state titles doing just that. But what I'm saying is this could be very different next time around. You just move a couple of those around. This is a very different dual meet. I'm glad it happened now because we have something to look forward to. And I think the bigger takeaway for me was, Burrell's just dominating performance over the rest of the field, like beating Chestnut Ridge by almost 30 points, right? So that to me was really impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Those two seem to always go back and forth, and Chestnut Ridge is a solid team, right? They got a number of good wrestlers. So the fact that Burrell did what they did against them, I think in a way too, it solidifies things for Burrell and the WPIAL as well, right? I mean, all season we've been talking about Burrell as the team to beat. But Derry's had a strong run. Derry's kind of started to creep their way up a bit and into the conversation. But I think this really solidifies Burrow as the top dog in the WPIAL without question.
Yeah, I mean, and Derry, Derry still has. They're still the underdogs, right? Until someone beats Burrow, it's gonna be them. But I think this performance shows that they belong, and they have some flexibility in the lineup too. And I think that shows because they have some movement. I think just some of those bubble guys like the Boylans and the Coons, like again, we know what the other guys are going to bring, but if you can get those two to wrestle at a high level and win those those toss-up matches, they can go far. They can win another WPIAL title, and they can make a run in Hershey. Not saying they're going to finish top 3, but they're gonna battle.
Well, Jeff, you've been alluding to it from the beginning and distracted and only listening to half of what I've said on this show so far. So let's get to it. As far as the sections, I know you always put the onus on me of like, oh, I know you love sections. I think
You
deep
do.
down over the years, this has really changed. Like in the beginning, I followed a little more closely. Now I just think it's you love the sections so much. Like you. And
now you're just like a
part
part-timer
all day today, and
you're literally just a
yeah,
part-timer now. And now, like, I have overtaken you as the one who has staying on top of section standings. And I mean, that used to be you, but yeah, you're right. This is I'm trying to figure out what, other than your jokes, what do you bring in here? Right? That's the question.
I mean, without me, everybody would just hear you talk for an hour,
which would be
painful,
terrible.
so.
Oh my God, that'd be terrible. Awful.
So if anything, it's just a breath of fresh air for everybody listening. Breath of fresh air. That's probably about it. So Jeff, let's get to it. Obviously, some great matches from tonight. Trinity in a close one at Cannon Mac. They beat the Big Macs 31-27.
Yeah, and it came down to TJ Allison from Trinity beat a freshman, Mason Calgaro, to win it for Trinity. So the Hillers are your Section 2 champions. Cannon Mac will finish in second there, but we knew that was going to be a close one, but Trinity just had a little bit more in the tank there. I have not gotten results from Moon and West Allegheny yet, so if you have those scores, please put it in the comments, because that would determine who's going to win Section 1. So just trying to get all this information in as these matches wrap up, but that would be critical if we knew who won that one. Where's Justin Waters at? Where are you at?
Bethel Park was a Section 3 champion. North Allegheny, a Section 4 champion. Kiski area, winner of Section 5, they beat Fox Chapel 43-21.
That was a very dominating performance by them.
Very strong performance. And you know what? I say this about Kiski. I mean, we've talked about a lot in our show, but just their back half of the lineup is so brutal to teams that, Kiski gets a few wins early, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and they have some other scrappy wrestlers in the mix. I mean, yeah, you're right. The back end of their lineup is just, it can go toe-to-toe with the best, but they have some other guys down low that are battling, right? And those ultimately were the difference there, because Fox Chapel has a very complete team. They've got 100 kids on the team, and they've got a bunch of starters that win, right? So yeah, that was a huge statement win by Kiski. I'm sure Chris Heater will have some type of snide remark for me, because I haven't had them ranked in the state, and I did at Fox Chapel, so I know it's coming. I'm just preparing for it right now. But they are Section 5 champions. You had mentioned North Allegheny. They won Section 4 by beating Butler tonight. Bethel Park wins it, the section title tonight. And we already talked about Section 2. We're still waiting on Section 1. And I don't think we have Section 6 yet.
I was going to say, I don't know if we heard that one. Obviously, North Hills was the leader of the pack going into tonight. Thomas Jefferson won Section 7, Connellsville wins Section 8, and Franklin Regional wins Section 9.
Yeah, and you look at some of the matchups that ended up happening here. Hunter Snyder is back for Latrobe. That was I believe I'm trying to pull up the score here now. 41-21. So a good dual meet. You know, you look at some of the individual results here. Scarton from Latrobe at heavyweight beat Tyler Gallus, who's back in the lineup. He beat him 8-1. As I mentioned, Hunter Snyder's back in the lineup for Greater Latrobe. Franks beat Bronson at 114, and Gretz pinned Maxwell. And we know Luke Lilshell ended up getting a fall. But yeah, I mean, a good weight class, or excuse me, a good dual meet there. I don't think it's a question of is Connellsville as good as we think they are, or is Latrobe better than we think they are, right? I think that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think obviously Connellsville is still the top dog going into the team tournament, but it's just a matter of where the rest of the chips fall, right, in the WPIAL. Where's everybody else going to get seated? Obviously, you look at the 9 section champs, and there are a lot of very good teams that are going to get seated in, and we're going to see some really great quarterfinal matchups, and obviously the semis are always a lot of fun as well. So should be interesting to see how the seeding committee kind of separates the teams. And Jeff, AA side, have you heard scores there?
I'm still trying to collect them. I know you're probably excited to hear that I don't know. Would you mention TJ, right? TJ won Section 7. Yeah. Ringgold beat Bell Vernon. This one was a really good dual meet here, and I'm pulling up the message that I got about this one. The reason being is a number 1 versus number 2 in the state happened. At 215 pounds, Jay Conroy, who's ranked number 1 in the state, beat Elijah Brown 14-10 in overtime. Elijah Brown was beating him 7-0 at the end of the first period. Ended up got a last-second takedown to make it 10-10. He got an escape and a takedown. Conroy got an escape and a takedown to win it 14-10. So that to me was that's a huge result, right? Ringgold ended up winning it 35-30. Christian Lowther also beat Cole Doppelhauer 8-6. That was another critical win. So in a dual standpoint, Ringgold ends up beating Bell Vernon, so they're going to finish second in that section behind TJ. TJ will end up winning that one. Franklin Regional beating Norwin. That came down to, I think, at least the last 2 bouts. Henry Patz ended up winning to secure, I think, the victory. But that was a back and forth match. I think Norwin got a bunch of wins to start off. So, looking at the AAA, and Greg, if you don't mind, I'd like to go through and give what I would seed it, at least the top 4, if you're all right with that.
Absolutely.
So I think right out of the gate, obviously Connellsville's got to be the top seed.
Yep.
I think Franklin Regional gets a second. They're undefeated. They're like 16-0, I think, at this point. They made it. They made it to Hershey last year. I would go TJ third, also undefeated, and Bethel Park fourth is where I'd put the top 4 seeds. Comments, questions?
Now,
complaints?
Why TJ over Bethel Park?
Yeah, I kind of thought you were going to ask me that. I just think you look at TJ and where they're at. I mean, you can look at the individual tournament scores, but they don't really, that doesn't really matter in dual meets. But I do believe that you can take that into consideration. They are undefeated. I just think I think winning their section with an undefeated record, I just think they go to 3. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, you look at the quality of teams too, right? I mean, TJ had Bell Vernon and Ringgold. Bethel Park had Mount Lebanon, Peters Township, Upper St. Clair. To me, it's like Mount Lebanon and Peters, comparative to Bell Vernon and Ringgold, probably similar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any team that you're like, oh, that team's a lot better quality win for Bethel Park over TJ. But the thing is, Thomas Jefferson dominated in those areas, right? Like you look at the points for instance, right? I don't know what the points were for today, but 237 as opposed to Bethel Park's 175. That also, I don't know if they look at that or not, but I mean, it's just another differentiator if you're trying to say, hey, TJ's the 3.
I wish they would have just met at the Hampton Dog Duels, to be honest with you. I mean, because when you look at Bethel Park, what they did there, they beat Altoona, Plum, Candimac, Latrobe, and Fox Chapel. So Altoona state ranked, Plum not bad, but not in the mix. Candimac was in the mix for a section title. Latrobe, second place in the section. Fox Chapel, second place in the section. So a very good start to the season for Bethel. And they got some of the wrestlers back since then, right? So they lost to University at West Virginia, which I if you want to put that on a blemish, I mean, it's out of state. I mean, I also wish they would have wrestled Derry, but that was snowed out, and we couldn't see that one, because that, I think, would have helped maybe shed some light on where they're at. I mean, I've done the matchups a couple times, and I did it after Allegheny County with Cordova winning over Palumbine. That changes things, in my opinion, for the team race, or excuse me, the dual meet. You look at TJ, what they did at the Hampton Dog Duels. They beat Mount Pleasant, Central Catholic, Hampton, Plum, and Candimac. So, like, Bethel really had the much better Dog Duels, right? I mean, TJ only beat Mount Pleasant, Central Catholic, and Hampton. I mean, that's not really saying a whole lot. They beat Plum, right, which very similar scores, and they beat Candimac. But outside of that, they beat Ringgold, they beat McKeesport, they beat Baldwin tonight. The thing about it is they'll wrestle on February 6th. Whether that's going to matter or not at that point is yet to be seen, right? But I don't know. I think you could argue for and against that a whole bunch between TJ and Bethel. They were first and second at that county tournament.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a tough one, right, to see who gets 3 and 4. Because I think, to me, Jeff, I think the 5 seed is Kiski. And that's going to be I wouldn't want to be the 4, right? I want to definitely get that 3 and not have to face Kiski in the quarterfinals. I mean, unless you disagree, but I think Kiski is the number 5, and I think they're a tough out here coming the postseason.
So I'm gonna disagree with you. I believe North Allegheny is going to be the 5 because they have a head-to-head win over Kiski this year.
They do. Okay, I must have missed that one.
Yeah, they beat them at their own tournament at the Cavalier Duels. They beat them 37-29. So
okay, so how do you see that though? Because Candimac beat North Allegheny.
Yeah, I the head-to-head still trumps that, in my opinion. That's a mulligan. The losing to Candimac was a mulligan. Every team gets one, maybe. I don't know. I'm just trying.
I don't know. I mean, because if you look at other head-to-heads, right? Candimac lost to Latrobe. They lost to Fox Chapel. So the win over North Allegheny, I mean, you could say that's a mulligan, but you could also say it's a mulligan for Kiski, right? That they're lost to North Allegheny. So
yeah, you could. I just think the head-to-head. I think you have the head-to-head, right? I mean, I when it comes to rankings, you have transitive property between the best indicator is 2 teams or 2 wrestlers going head-to-head, right? If wrestlers A wrestle C and B wrestle C and they end up splitting results, like, okay, you kind of have to go to a different criteria. But, I mean, yes, they have that loss to Canon-Mac, but they beat Kiski head-to-head. So and again, this is just more fuel for Chris Heater to be like, you asshole, But I'm just saying, I think, they both won section titles and they wrestled head-to-head. That's that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that loss to Canon-Mac is what sticks out for me to North Allegheny.
Sure, it's a bad on paper, it's a bad loss, I guess. But, I mean, they were missing a wrestler. You could say the same thing, like, oh, Kiski, if they would have flipped, I don't like playing the what-ifs. And, but now if they hadn't wrestled head-to-head, this is a no-brainer. Obviously, Kiski is the 5. Clearly, they're the 5, in my opinion. But because you have the head-to-head, despite the blemish of losing to Canon-Mac by 3 points, like I still think you have to give the nod to North Allegheny, right? I mean, I feel like you're trying to talk me out of it.
Now let me throw another.
Am I crazy for saying this? Please, folks, tell me if I'm crazy. But they get the 5 seed. They beat them head-to-head.
That's true. I guess I look at that loss being a bad one for North Allegheny, but I could see your point. I guess the other question, Jeff, is once you get past the top 4, do you then can you consider second place teams? Because
you should. Yeah, you absolutely can.
Norwin just finished an undefeated season up to today, right? Then they lose to Franklin Regional in a tight one. We're talking Franklin Regional's the number 2 team. Does Norwin get into that mix for the 5-6 seed?
That's a good question. It's, in my opinion, it's the best teams regardless. I mean, if you have a loaded section, just that shouldn't be, you have to win your section to be seeded, or to be considered for over, the 4. So, on paper, yes, they had a close match with Franklin Regional. But the problem is, we have not seen them against many of the top schools other than Canon-Mac. They beat Canon-Mac 39-30. So again, we can go back to this whole, Kiski and North Allegheny. You can say, well, the wash is, the clean way to do it is, well, Norwin has 1 loss on the season, and it's the 2nd seed Franklin Regional. They have a win over Canon-Mac, which is a good win for them. But they don't have any losses to Kiski or North Allegheny. North Allegheny has that loss to Canon-Mac, but they have the win over Kiski. So a clean way to do it would be, okay, you have Connsville 1, Franklin Regional 2, TJ or Bethel 3-4, doesn't matter. Then 5, Norwin, 6, North Allegheny, 7, Kiski. But outside of that, Norwin has not wrestled really anybody of note other than McGuffey and Plum. They beat Penn Trafford, which that to me is a good win for them. The win over McGuffey doesn't really do a lot for me, but the win over Canon-Mac to start the season, yes, that's a big win for them. So yeah, you could make it so they're the 4, or excuse me, they're the 5th. Even though they're not a section champ, I think you absolutely can do that.
All right, let's throw another wrinkle at you, Jeff. What about Trinity? They lost to Kiski right back in the beginning of December. You're talking about a 1 blemish, and they were without guys. We talked about that early in the season. Trinity was trying to get healthy. They just beat Canon-Mac, who beat North Allegheny. Do they get into the conversation? Because now you're looking at Kiski beat Trinity, North Allegheny beat Kiski. You could go back and forth right now. Now we're talking in circles, but they're another team you could throw into the mix.
The short answer is yes. Yes, you can throw them into the mix. The longer answer is, I think the committee's going to look at a few things, and they're going to look at that Kiski area opening season, the loss that they had there to them. I think they're going to look at that win over West Allegheny, depending on what happens in Section 1, because we're not sure yet. We don't have results yet. No one's put it in the chat yet. At least I haven't seen it, who won that. But, you have a win over a section champ. Should you be considered? They have a loss to Erie Cathedral Prep, which so be it. It's not that big of a deal. They have the win over Cannon Mac. So, I mean, you can talk yourself into a lot of different scenarios. And I don't know what the committee's going to look at outside of head-to-heads. Are they going to look at points for? Are they going to look at strength of schedule? Are they going to look to see if some of their starters were out or if they were not out? Because we do know that teams evolve and progress as the 2-pound comes in, as guys are getting healthy, guys are getting eligible, whatever it is, right? A dual meet evolves as the year goes on. It's I think who are the best right now. I think winning the section probably gives you a little bit more precedent over non-section champs, even though it probably should be like a pound for pound type analogy. But yeah, I mean, yes. So Trinity could be included in that mix, and I don't know how far out they seed. I'll have to ask Bill Lewis or Phil Mary where they're at with seeding. But I mean, they have to at least seed the top 8, right? I mean, you can't not seed the top 8.
Yeah, I would say at least the top 8. And based off of our conversation, I would say 5 through 8 could be any mix of Norwin, Kiski, North Allegheny, Trinity. Is that a safe assumption, or is there another team you'd throw in that mix?
So wait, say the teams again one more time for me.
Trinity, North Allegheny, Kiski, and Norwin.
Yes. As non-section winners.
Well, I mean, you have 3 section champs, right? Trinity, Kiski, and North Allegheny,
right?
And Norwin being the one non-section champion, but they lost to what would be the number 2 seed in Franklin Regional.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. I was trying to think whether or not you included Fox Chapel, but no, I agree with that.
So then it's just a matter of how they seed that 5 through 8, and based off this, conversation, it could go any different way, right? Just depending on how they kind of look at the matchup results, because they've all kind of beaten each other in a way, or had one big common opponent, right? And that's Cannon Mac.
Yeah, I mean, Cannon Mac's wrestled about everybody. I don't think they've wrestled Butler, but they wrestled just about everybody. Which I mean, and I'm going to get on a soapbox a little bit, but I mean, this is why I love when these teams go to all these dual meets, and I love the Kiski Cavalier duels. I love the Hampton Dog duels. I love the Trinity duels. I wish we would see some of these other schools at some more dual tournaments. I would have loved to see Norwin, wrestle with some of the folks outside of their section, but they also had 3 of the biggest tournaments in the nation on their schedule, right? So I mean, there's that, but yeah, I don't know. And you look at all the sections. I mean, like Latrobe, Fox Chapel, who we mentioned, Butler. There's a lot of good second place teams here that could win other sections depending on where they're at, right? That's just the way it is, and that's always the way it's going to be.
Yep, absolutely. Should be interesting to see how they break it down. And then obviously a couple wild cards get chosen as well. But brackets will be out, I believe, tomorrow, right? And we'll see, where the committee puts them. But at least we kind of have an idea of the top 8. As we were talking, Jeff, anything from on the AA side?
I'm just give me 1 second here. I was trying to pay attention to you, surprisingly.
That's a first. I mean, took how many years?
Yeah. I'm trying. South Park beat Elizabeth Ford 42-32. Laurel beat Elwood City 47-28. Let's see who else here. McGuffey. Greensburg-Salem beat Ligonier Valley 42-29. Albert Gallatin beat Hempfield 41-33. That's crazy. McGuffey beat Chartiers Houston 65-9. Jefferson Morgan beat Fraser 58-17. So where's that? What does that do with our sections here? Do we have section champions?
I think we kind of had an idea of most of the section champs kind of going into it.
Yeah, McGuffey's going to win. What's that?
I was just going to say, you kind of look at the top 4 here in in Double A. And Burrell, to me, obviously the number one. Derry, I think, is a number two. McGuffey, I would say, is a number three. And then for Quaker Valley would be my guess. I have to look at their individual scores just to kind of remember who they wrestled in duels. But thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that could be. I think you could make an argument for that. I think Laurel could have a argument to be before. Looking at their 16-3. They have a win over West Allegheny, which is potentially a section champion. They beat Pine Richland. They lost to Derry 53-23, so they lost to what we would say is the second seed here. They lost to Freedom. Okay, well, that throws a wrench into things. Yeah, probably Quaker Valley. Yeah.
And then the other
they lost to Fort LaBeouf. They lost to they wrestled so many. They wrestled in the Wheeling Park duels, which it's all out of state duels. They beat Avonworth, beat Carlington. I'm assuming they beat Keystone Oaks tonight. They beat Moon. So I mean, they don't have a blemish like Laura does, losing the Freedom.
And the other team you could throw in the mix too is Burgestown. They're undefeated in their section. Their only losses are to Northern York and North Hills. In the North Hills, obviously on the AAA side.
Yeah.
So they haven't really had any, I guess, tough opponents. I guess you could say, right? The scores have been pretty lopsided and haven't had too many matches as far as on the AA side. But you'd probably, I mean, you'd have everybody knows they're kind of rebuilding a little bit, but still a solid season for them given all the people they lost.
Yeah,
from last
for sure.
year.
Yeah.
So you'd probably have to throw that. I would think Burgestown. I'd say Quaker Valley only because of you kind of still know some of the studs they have, but Burgestown I think would be in that 5-6 mix.
Yeah, I personally think the top three are pretty clear, right?
I do too. Yep.
But I mean, you're really, we could really split some hairs over Burgettstown, Bentworth, Laurel. I don't know who won Central Valley and Freedom if they're wrestling. I mean, Freedom, if they win, they could be yeah.
They could be that 4-5.
Quaker Valley. And we had talked about Highlands before too. Yeah, I mean, you really could get. I mean, I wouldn't want to see Double A because you're gonna piss somebody off. You're not gonna be. You're gonna be wrong in some circumstances because there's just not enough data out there.
Yeah, not enough common opponents.
There's really not enough common opponents. It's really, really a shame because you just don't have. I mean, you really don't have the ability to accurately say who's the better team or not unless you sit down and you look at every single matchup, right? And who has time to go through every individual matchup of every single team in a dual meet scenario. You can't, right? So you have to look at other things. I don't know what they do. I'm not sure what they're going to do.
I think based off that Freedom win against Laurel, if Freedom does have the win over Central Valley tonight, I'd have to put Freedom in there as either the 4 or the 5, with Quaker Valley being the other 4-5 team. And then 6, 7, 8 would be that mix of Burgestown, Laurel, Bentworth. Those would probably be the areas that I would be looking at in Double A.
Yeah,
we'll see. It's a not an envious job.
Laurel did beat Elwood City 47-28. I don't know if I said that or not. Greensburg, Salem. We said about. Yeah, so I don't have results yet for the other ones. Burrell wrestled Highlands, Bentworth at Best Center. So yeah, I'm not sure where we're at with those.
Well, Jeff, in addition to seeing what the brackets look like here, once the committee puts those together, we have some wrestling going on this weekend. The Ultimate Warrior Tournament where some WPIAL schools will be wrestling at, and the seeds are out as far as the top 16 go. And you look at the WPIAL and some of the guys they have going at 107 pounds. Rocco DeCario of Derry comes in as a number 6 seed, and just kind of lumping a couple weights together. Nick McGarity of Peters Township will be the number 1 seed at 114 pounds.
Yeah, I mean that's a matchup that I really like to see. Again, Mateo Gallegos from Du Bois, who was a Powerade runner-up, he had beaten McGarity in a preseason event. He finished above him at the Midwinter Mayhem, but they didn't hit. So excited to see that potential match. But there's a lot of other really good guys in that weight as well. And I just a side note, I love the Ultimate Warrior. There's a lot of good mix between AA and AAA and guys from teams from all over the state. So it's a nice little mix there, and you'll be able to watch it on Rockfin, streaming it Friday and Saturday. But we're also streaming the Cold Cracker, which Cannon Max at. So the Big Max will be on the big screen as well.
Looking at some other weights, Jeff, Carter Putt of Indiana, he comes in as the number 5 seed at 127 pounds.
Yeah, he and teammate Nico Fennell are switched for right now. Nico will be coming back down to 127, but Putt is as solid as they come, right? We know how good he is, and he had a really good Ultimate Warrior tournament last year. Nico Fennell is your top seed at 133. It's a pretty loaded weight class. Anthony Musi is back up to 133, where he is the 3rd seed there behind Caden Judice of Boulder, who's a state medalist. So, but you also have Drake McClure in there as well. I mean, he's somebody who we've said is, him and Mason Wright. Good thing Mason Wright's not here. They've wrestled 900 times. Yeah, it's and we also have the Fred Bell this weekend too, which there's a good amount of WPIAL schools there. We're not streaming it, not this year, but we are going to be in the future. But yeah, a lot of good wrestling coming up this weekend.
Yeah, 133 is pretty much an all WPIAL top 4, right outside of Judice being number 2. So solid weight for the WPIAL. Other weight classes, Jeff, where the WPIAL has a guy, in the top 8 as far as the seeds go. You have to go down to 152, where Mason Horwat of Derry gets the number 1 spot, and Sam Jacobs of Armstrong is at number 7.
Yeah, and Darius McMillan is also in there at number 3 as well.
Thank you.
McMillan got hurt at the Ultimate Warrior, I believe it was last year. Horwat, this is Derry's first time going, at least in the last few years. I don't know if they've been there before. And Owen Ifchik of Bentworth is your top seed at 160. So again, somebody who we talk a lot about on the program. Ewan Olson is also in there at number 7 at 160 pounds. Really excited to see where he finishes up. The one that kind of not surprised me, but Caleb Kinsey from Armstrong's your top seed at 172 pounds. Kinsey's one of those guys where, those Armstrong guys just, they're well coached. They're a good program. They come out and surprise you. I think I said this last weekend, but, at that Panther Holiday, I felt like they were on every single mat. They had a guy everywhere. And it's a little bit more of a balanced weight at 172, but he's your top seed, and Parker Ney from Peters Township is the 8th seed.
189, Brady Brown of Derry. He comes in as the number 2 seed.
Yeah, and that could be a lights out weight because you got Close, Brown, and Kyle Scott. Close was a 3-time state medalist going for his 4th, and Kyle Scott's a state medalist. But you also have Ron from Mifflin County, who's a state qualifier. Brungard as well from Central Mountain, who's pretty tough. So, and you also have Tay Bradshaw from Armstrong down there at number 12. He could surprise some few people. But yeah, Brady Brown could really make a statement here at 189 pounds.
Go down to 285, where Philip Rarick of Armstrong, he gets the number 3 seed. And Zach Stromock of Peters Township is at number 9. Alex Rosilko of Bentworth at number 10.
Yeah, and heavyweight's a good one. You got Higley and Neely there, and Rarick is going to have his hands full with those guys. But, yeah, overall, a really solid tournament.
Yeah, should be a lot of fun. Make sure you check it out here on Rockfin. Here with the PA Power Wrestling stream. We'll make sure to have everything for you as far as that tournament A lot of wrestling coming up here this weekend, Jeff, and then next week starts the team tournament.
That's it. I get ready. I mean, wake up, Greg. It's time. It's your season. This is your time to shine.
Next weekend will be the team tournament championships on the WPIAL side, and then you have the state duels, Jeff, and not at the Giant Center this year.
No, not at the Giant Center this year. Yeah, not there. It's Altoona Fieldhouse.
That's right. So make sure you stay with us here. We'll get you set for both tournaments, and obviously we'll have some updates for you when we have the show next week to get you set for what should be an exciting weekend of AA and AAA team championships. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We appreciate you listening in and watching in.